KDWN News Time, 9 o'clock. For 20 years, Brian A. Lowe and Associates have helped Las Vegas locals protect against foreclosure and file Chapter 7 and 13 bankruptcy. If you're in trouble, call 259-0002. Good morning. I'm John Schaefer with this hour's top stories. Arson and homicide investigators are looking into a Clark County house fire after a body was found at the scene. Authorities say they responded early this morning to the home near Eastern and Warm Springs. Clark County fire officials say the body was found in the home's garage where the fire was. Las Vegas police say the incident is being investigated as a homicide. Guests have been allowed back into the Excalibur on the Las Vegas Strip after fire alarms went off early this morning. Clark County firefighters responded to the resort a little before 2 a.m. and evacuated guests from floors 11 through 28. Guests say there was a strange odor that smelled like a burning belt on a car. Station reports hotel patrons were allowed back in at about 4 a.m. After nearly a week underground, the Alabama hostage situation is over.
Some details haven't been released and may not be. Stephen Richardson is the special agent in charge of the FBI Mobile, Alabama division.
Unfortunately, we will have to deal with another one of these situations somewhere, someday, and we want it to be just as successful.
He says negotiations with 65-year-old Jimmy Lee Dykes went downhill. Dykes was seen holding a gun, and agents, fearing the boy was in imminent danger, went in and rescued him in an operation that left Dykes dead. As for the 5-year-old,
he's laughing, joking, playing, eating, the things that you would expect a normal 5 to 6-year-old young man to do.
I'm Carlotta Bradley.
A 72-year-old Las Vegas man shot and killed one of 3 people who broke into his home Monday morning. When police arrived, they found one of the suspects dead in the man's backyard. A second suspect was arrested after he crashed into a police car outside the home in the northwest part of the valley. Third suspect got away on foot. An assembly member accused of threatening the Democratic leader has been sworn in as part of an agreement in which he will take a leave of absence. Democrat Stephen Brooks of North Las Vegas took the oath of office yesterday with the 42 members of the lower chamber. Assembly Speaker Marilyn Kirkpatrick said details of the legislative leave may not be finalized until today, saying the sticking point was how long Brooks would be away. Les Mis, Evita, and the Book of Mormon all making their way to Las Vegas as part of the Smith Center's 2013-2014 Broadway season. The 10 plays announced yesterday mark the first full season for the $470 million center, which opened in March of last year. Smith Center President Myron Martin says pent-up demand for the fine arts drove a successful debut year that had the center selling about twice as many subscriptions as expected. The financial report brought to you by Las Vegas Jewelry and Coin Buyers. On Wall Street, the Dow's up 103. Gold is at $16.69 an ounce. Silver $31.37. Platinum $16.91. And palladium $751.80. For questions about your precious metal or coins, call 547-1670. News brought to you by Del Taco. Wednesday, February 6th is Try It Free Day at Del Taco. From 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., get any one item on the new Fresh Deals but Free menu, free with any purchase. It's one day only at Del Taco. Participation may vary. It's 9:03. Here's Mitch Kelly with the latest from the KDWN Nevada Credit Union Traffic Center.
This report brought to you by 99 Cents Only Stores. Kids always want to have the coolest Valentine's cards to share with their classmates, and 99 Cents Only Stores has a large selection of boxed Valentine's cards with popular themes for only 99.99 cents each. Save more and shop 99 Cents Only Stores first. Still, this crash being cleaned up 95 northbound past Eastern on the left shoulder. A little bit of braking approaching it. Leftover crash 95 southbound approaching Valley View, not causing any slowdowns, and no problems along 15, 215 or Summerlin Parkway. Newer Service Street accidents on the east side with Clark County Fire and Metro teaming up at Boulder Highway and Harmon. Also on the east side, Tropicana east of Maryland Parkway and Flamingo east of Maryland Parkway. West side accidents finishing up, Sahara at Fort Apache and Spring Mountain at Rainbow. From the KDWN Nevada Credit Union Traffic Center, it's Mitch Kelly on News Talk 720 KDWN.
The KDWN forecast: sunshine, 69 the high, partly cloudy, 47 overnight, partly cloudy, 68 for Wednesday. Sunny and 54 right now in Las Vegas. Your next update at 9:30 or when news breaks, and we're always streaming online at KDWN.com, brought to you by Brian A. Lowe and Associates. I'm John Schaefer, News Talk 720 KDWN.
First Option Mortgage, the people you call first.
So, have you looked at your first 2013 pay stub yet? You'd better check it. If you're like most people, it's a little lighter this year. Not exactly what you had in mind for your New Year's resolution. The end of the payroll tax holiday means you're likely taking home between $50 and $200 less every month than you were last year. Want it back? Call First Option Mortgage. We can put that money back and more. So grab that pay stub, Pick up the phone and call First Option Mortgage. The sooner you call, the sooner it's back. First Option Mortgage, 669-5400. 669-5400.
First Option Mortgage, the people you call first.
First Option Mortgage, LLC, 3770 Howard Hughes Parkway, Suite 195, Las Vegas, Nevada, 89169. License 3269.
So, Jacqueline.
Yes, Mom?
I wanted to talk to you about something and... Oh, wait. Hold on. I just got a text.
Oh, wait, Mom. I just got a message. So many comments on my comment.
Hey, guys, check out my new video game.
Mom, what?
Huh?
Pew, pew. What'd you say?
This weekend, unplug. Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. To find the forest nearest you, go to discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
More live local talk than any station in Las Vegas. News Talk 720 KDWN. 50,000 watts of news and talk. Be in the know when you're on the go. News Talk 720 KDWN is available wherever you are online at KDWN.com. At KDWN.com. Local, national, and international news, plus weather and traffic. All at your fingertips, all online at KDWN.com. The broadcast of information on this show does not create an attorney-client relationship with any of the listeners. Communication between the listener and the hosts of this show will not be confidential. The information provided on this show is prepared for a general audience without investigation into the facts of each particular case and is not to be considered legal advice. The information provided on this show should not be used as a substitute for legal advice. The listener is advised to consult with a qualified attorney on any legal issue they may have. It's time for News Talk 720 KDWN's Legal Hour. Have a legal question? Call now 257-KDWN. That's 257-5396.
KDWN News Time 9:07. Welcome to the KDWN Legal Hour Tuesday edition. We are excited to have a brand new legal show on Tuesday mornings for you right here at News Talk 720 KDWN. Airene Williamson, attorney at law here in Las Vegas with the Williamson Law Offices. Airene, good morning.
Good morning, John. Glad to be here today.
It is very exciting for us to have you here. You specialize in bankruptcy, landlord-tenant issues.
That's correct, John. The Williamson Law Office, we actually practice primarily in business litigation and business disputes. Basically, we either pursue or defend litigation for individuals and businesses, but we also do have bankruptcy, immigration, and family law division.
All right, everyone, tell us a little bit about your legal background, and then we will get right into that exciting topic of bankruptcy, which we're joking about it not being exciting, but it does affect a lot of people here in Las Vegas.
It is a very important topic, and I get a lot of questions regarding bankruptcy. But prior to Williamson Law Office, I was actually an associate at Gibbs, Giddens, Locher, Turner, and Sennett as a business litigator. So I have been practicing for around 6 years, and that's what I do, is business litigation.
All right. Well, Airene, let's get right into this hard and heavy topic of bankruptcy. 257-5396, the number to call if you have any questions or comments for Airene. Maybe you have some questions about bankruptcy you'd like to have answered while we have Airene here. 257-5396. So, Airene, we hear all about all different kinds of bankruptcies. You hear different numbers being tossed about. What are the differences? What is a Chapter 7?
Well, today we're just going to focus on consumer bankruptcy, and that is primarily Chapter 7 and Chapter 13. Now, Chapter 7 is probably the most popular chapter of bankruptcy that people probably know about, and that is a liquidation bankruptcy. Now, Chapter 7 is historically called liquidation bankruptcy because when the trustee is appointed in the Chapter 7 estate, they liquidate all the non-exempt assets and distribute it to the creditors. But since the passage of the 2005 Legislation Act, which we'll talk about later, I'm assuming, basically the demographics of Chapter 7 filers are lower median income filers. So there's not a lot of assets to be distributed at the end of the discharge. Basically what happens is at the end of a Chapter 7, it's just a discharge of the debt, which is a good thing. When I talk to clients, I say discharge is a good thing. Dismissal is not a good thing.
So what kind of situation financially would I find myself in that would make me come to you and discuss a Chapter 7?
Primarily, Chapter 7 are for people that are experiencing a lot of credit card debts, medical bills, and we'll talk about the difference between Chapter 7 and Chapter 13. But primarily, if you have a lot of unsecured debts, which means it's not attached to any collateral, such as a house or a car, those are secure debts. But if it's just credit cards and your medical bills are piling up, this is probably the right time to call me or call an attorney for a Chapter 7. And Chapter 7 is basically a lot popular for people because this is the shortest and probably the simplest to file for people. It can be done pro se, although what pro se, I mean, you can represent yourself.
Sure.
But it can be done in a simple manner if you have a simple financial situation. So Chapter 7 takes about, 4 to 6 months at the most from the time you file it to the time it gets discharged. And that is the simplest way to do it.
And Chapter 13 then, on the other hand?
Chapter 13 is primarily called the reorganization. This is less popular for people because it takes about 3 to 5 years to complete a Chapter 13.
Wow.
Right. And basically, it's a repayment plan. Although your unsecured debts will most likely be discharged, Chapter 13 is for people with secure debts that they would like to keep, such as a house or a car. And if they do want to keep it, they have to file what's called a repayment plan to the trustee, wherein they have to propose a payment to their creditors over the next 3 to 5 years. And frankly, not a lot of people succeed with a Chapter 13 repayment plan because it takes 3 to 5 years of monthly payments to the trustee. Sometimes they can't afford it. And so when you do a Chapter 13, you have to make sure that you can actually afford to do a chapter or a repayment plan Chapter 13 because you got to think, okay, I have all these debts that I want to keep, but I also have to pay the arrears on my house, the current mortgage on the house, and my daily necessities. So the statistics in the bankruptcy court is only maybe 20% of people succeed in Chapter 13.
Yeah, I'd imagine if you're already find yourself in the situation you need to file bankruptcy, you don't have the extra money laying around to pay your bills in the first place. That's how you got into bankruptcy.
That's correct. And that's why if you are in a financial situation, you want to talk to your attorney whether bankruptcy is the right one for you. In fact, if you think you can't afford a bankruptcy, a lot of people come to me and say, well, I can't afford the bankruptcy anyway. But you have to think if you can pass for a Chapter 7, it will free up a lot of your debts. It will discharge a lot of your debts. So it will give you time to breathe and pay off those debts that you want to keep.
I think a lot of people might be afraid to file bankruptcy because they're afraid I'm going to lose everything. I'll be living on the street. They're going to take my car. They're going to take my house, everything I own. But Nevada is pretty lenient when it comes to exceptions under a bankruptcy, isn't it?
Right. And when you file for Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 or any other chapters that are less popular, there is called a non-exempt asset and an exempt asset. Exempt assets is actually listed under the NRS 21, but there are certain assets that you can keep. And some examples just on the exempt assets that we have are, for example, if you are filing, that's why when I advise people if they're filing jointly, it's better to do jointly because when you have exempt assets, you can double it. And you can keep this exempt assets, which means the trustee will not touch it, will not sell it to the creditors. So these are, for example, a car. If you have an equity on a car, which is $15,000, you can keep it. And if you're filing jointly, you can double it. A house, for example, you can keep an equity up to $500,000, depending on how long you've lived in Nevada. And if you have lived in Nevada less than 2 years, talk to an attorney because there are certain exemptions to that. There's certain qualifications. There's a lot of exempt assets that you can keep. And I guess the confusion for people that are filing for Chapter 7 is that, well, what if I lose my house? Is the trustee going to take my house? Is the trustee going to take my car? Well, you either Chapter 7 or Chapter 13, you can elect. You can select. There's a schedule on the bankruptcy. You can actually check mark all the security and what you want to do with it, whether you want to keep it or surrender it. If it's, for example, a house that's underwater that you don't want to keep it anyway, and there's a lot of properties out there that's available for rental, then just surrender it if you have to. And there's a lot of people that are doing Chapter 7. They can surrender it. They can also keep it if they love the house.
But if you keep it, you have to keep paying for it. You can't,
exactly.
You can't think in your head, I'm going to go and file bankruptcy and get rid of all my debts, so I'm not going to have a mortgage or a car payment, but I still get to have my house and my car.
That's exactly right, John. You cannot live in a house for free. That's for sure. If you do want to keep the house and you're under Chapter 7, you have to check mark reaffirm. And when you say reaffirm, then you are telling the creditors, I want to keep the house, but I also want to have to keep paying for it. Now, when I tell people to reaffirm a property, they have to be careful when they select a reaffirmation, because when you reaffirm on a property, that means it's as if a bankruptcy has not been filed on that property. So it's not going to be discharged. So it's a very grave and serious decision that you want to talk to your attorney about, because if you fail to pay later on, then you've lost that protection of the bankruptcy.
Right. How often can you file? Is once every 7 years?
Once for a Chapter 7, it's once every 8 years. That's for sure. And for Chapter 7 and Chapter 13, and there's a lot of confusion about it, and I think people think that they can just choose between one or the other. And the fact is, since the passage of the 2005 Bankruptcy Reform Act, or what they call a Bankruptcy Abuse Prevention Creditor Protection Act, it's a mouthful, they have now instated a means test, which means you actually have to qualify for Chapter 7 now. You cannot just say, okay, I want to do Chapter 7 so I can discharge my debt. Well, you have to follow the means test or qualify for a means test. If you don't, then you are pushed to a Chapter 13. So in the IRS, since the means test has been instated in 2005, the IRS has instated an average median income for each state that you have to qualify for. In Nevada, depending on how many family members are in the house, there's different median income that is instated. If you're family of one, you're single, you're living alone, it's probably $45,000. Okay. So if you're below that, most likely Chapter 7. If you're slightly above that, the means test kicks in. Then what is the means test? Well, if your median income is above the average, then you have to follow the income minus expenses, and depending on whatever's left, then you can probably file for Chapter 7 or Chapter 13.
All right, we will be back with Las Vegas attorney Airene Williamson right after we check in with Mitch Kelly in the KDWN 1 Nevada Credit Union Traffic Center.
And this updated 917 brought to you by Jersey Boys. Ask about their special $99 Saturday 5 p.m. dinner and show package. Visit jerseyboysvegas.com or jerseyboysvegas.com or call Ticketmaster at 800-745-3000. Just one area of slowdown on the Valley freeways, and it's construction related up on the Northern Beltway around Bradley Road. You have lane shifts in effect now around Bradley. Crews are building a bridge which will eventually carry Bradley Road over the Northern Beltway. Completion of that set for sometime in April. East side wrecks on the surface streets, Boulder Highway at Harmon and Tropicana east of Maryland Parkway, and a west side accident, Sahara at Fort Apache. Your next update's at 9:30, and from the KDWN 1 Nevada Credit Union Traffic Center, I'm Mitch Kelly on News Talk 720 KDWN.
Tune in Saturdays at 6 p.m. for Vegas Sports Nuts live from Murphy's Law in East Flamingo. If you love the Chargers and hate the Raiders, or love the Bears and hate the Packers, we want you on Vegas Sports Nuts. Register on VegasSportsNuts.com. Vegas Sports Nuts at Murphy's Law, where the drinks are free and the food is great. Vegas Sports Nuts, they're crazy!
24/7 private vault. Better than a bank.
Mr. Elliott at 24/7 Private Vaults. You need privacy today. Anyone that wants to start a lawsuit with you has your name and your social security number. At 24/7 Private Vaults, it is totally private. Call me at 948-5555. That's 948-5555.
24/7 private vault. Better than a bank.
This is Jorge Gonzalez from Vegas Wife Sports. Join me, Gabe Morency, and Todd Furman as we break down the opening betting lines right here on KDWN 720 AM, Sunday at 9 p.m.
Each year, there's one weekend that NASCAR fans in Las Vegas circle on their calendars. It's March 8th through 10th when NASCAR returns to the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Tony Stewart and Jimmy Johnson are already texting about it.
Jimmy, winning Vegas was great. Think I'll do it again.
Dude, I've won 4 of them. How you gonna beat me?
Wasn't too hard last year.
March 8th through 10th, NASCAR returns to Las Vegas. Call 644-4444 or visit lvms.com today for your weekend package.
Now back to KDWN's Legal Hour. Have a legal question? Call now. 257-KDWN. That's 257-5396.
KDWN News Time 9:19. Welcome back to the KDWN Legal Hour. Brand new show that we have here every Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock. Airene Williamson, attorney at law from the Williamson Law Office. If you'd like to reach Airene at her office because you have more questions about bankruptcy or would like to get more in-depth with her, 702-445-2711 is her phone number to her office. You can also email Airene at info@wlawoffice.com and check out their website at wlawoffice.com. Airene, are you ready for your very first phone call?
Sure.
Tiffany is on the line with a question about bankruptcy. Good morning, Tiffany.
Good morning.
Hi, Tiffany. Good morning. How are you?
Hi, Hi, Irene. How are you?
I'm doing well. Go for it.
Okay, so I have a question. Me and my husband, we actually, with the economy and everything, we make pretty good money. Last year, we made $140,000. But the problem is we have debt from a while back, and we have a lot of credit cards that we had endured in the past. And we don't have any money after our paychecks after paying them off. And I also have 4 kids. So I didn't know, do I even qualify because I make so much to do a bankruptcy?
Well, Tiffany, just from the income that you stated, you said you have a family of 4. The median income is $65,000. So you are for sure over the Chapter 7 median income cutoff. But so the next step would be to pass the means test. It doesn't mean that you're automatically out of Chapter 7. It just means that we need to sit down, go through the means test, give me your income, give me your expenses, and depending on the result of income minus expenses and the percentage of your whatever's left over against your unsecured debt, which is mostly, I would imagine, credit cards or what have you.
Yeah, we have a house payment, normal car payments, but most of the debt is credit cards.
And that's really what the purpose of Chapter 7 is. If you have mostly unsecured debt, that could be the perfect one for you. So don't discount Chapter 7 yet. We can go through it and see if it's the right one for you. And from what you said, it seems like from the expenses minus income, there's not much left over. So we'll see if that's the right one for you.
Okay. And does it matter? I mean, I have 4 kids and me and my husband. So is that what they consider a family of 6 or just a family of 4 because of the kids?
Oh, family of 4 includes all the individuals in your household, immediate family. So if the family of 4 is 65,000. So you have 4 kids plus 2 of you. So that's 6. So that's additional. The bankruptcy court or the bankruptcy code allows additional $7,500 for each additional dependent. So 65,000 plus 7,500 plus 7,500. Right, but still way over, right? So we still need to sit down and go through it.
Yeah, I have your number, so I'm going to talk to my husband, see what, I don't even know if bankruptcy is the way to go.
Right.
I mean, I just know that we don't have any money really after our paychecks, so it's just kind of annoying. I have no breathing room to do anything. So I'll talk to him, and then if I have your number, if I need to call you guys, I will.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Tiffany.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you very much, Tiffany. If you have a question for Irene, 257-5396. All right, so we were discussing bankruptcy, the differences between Chapter 7, Chapter 13. Mm-hmm. Which one is the right one for the people? And with Tiffany right there, it all depends.
It all depends. And there's two statements to that. It's one, you may not have a choice which one you can choose. And depending on your income, depending on what happens in the means test result, you may be forced to do Chapter 13 or Chapter 7. But the second statement to that is, what is the state of your financial affairs? If you have a choice between Chapter 7 and 13, 7 is mostly for probably low-income earners. If you have a lot of dischargeable debts, and I'll talk about later the difference between dischargeable and non-dischargeable. I think people think that when you're in bankruptcy, you can discharge all your debts, but there's certain exceptions to that. If you have very few non-exempt assets that we've talked about, Chapter 7 is for you. If you are current on mortgage payment, or if you don't want to save your house anyway, Chapter 7 is probably the right one for you. If you're current on your car and either you want to surrender your car, Chapter 7. But if you cannot pass Chapter 7, you're forced to Chapter 13. If you have arrears on your house, if you have arrears on your car and you want to save those secured debt, if you want to save those property, Chapter 7 will probably not be the right fund for you if you are arrears on your mortgage and you're having a hard time paying them, but you want to save that house because it's such a great house. So Chapter 13 is the right one for you because you have to propose a payment plan to your creditor and see if you can make payments on it. Now, make sure when you do that you can actually afford it, because not only are you paying for arrears that we've talked about, you're also paying for your current and for your basic daily necessities, and you're paying for the trustee, which has a 10% fee. You're probably paying for your attorney, which is advisable in a Chapter 13. So there's a lot of planning going on in a Chapter 13.
So suppose that I can pay for everything. I have a mortgage, I have a car payment, and I've racked up a lot of credit card debt, but I can afford to pay for all of it. I just don't want to pay for my credit card debt anymore. I think I'd rather file bankruptcy because in that time I've also put away a lot of cash, so it doesn't matter to me if it hurts my credit by filing bankruptcy. I just don't want to make those payments anymore.
Well, That's an interesting question because, theoretically in Chapter 13, you can discharge your credit card debts, which is the unsecured debts. And but the problem is the trustee is going to look at your cash.
Okay.
So, when you file for bankruptcy, there are forms that comes with the bankruptcy filing, and that's called schedules. You have to list all your assets. You have to list all your cash. And you can also, we're talked about the non-exempt versus exempt assets. There are non-exempt assets which the trustee will take. And if you are in excess of that, if you have excess cash, excess inventory, you got a motorcycle, you got boats, you have jewelry that are in excess of the exemption amount. If you have mink coats, Armani suits, the trustee will take that, sell it off, and distribute it to your creditors.
So while it's a tool there for people who need it, it's not something for people who just suddenly decide, I've bought all the stuff I want. Now I just don't want to pay my bills for it anymore.
That's correct. And because the Bankruptcy 2005 Act has a position that bankruptcy is a privilege and not a right. So you got to be careful when you file for bankruptcy. And I want to talk about a little bit more about disclosing your assets and disclosing your properties. And people come to me and say, do I have to list all my creditors in the bankruptcy? Do I have to list all my assets in your bankruptcy? And the answer is absolutely yes. And that's because when you are filing for bankruptcy, you are under, obviously, the penalty of perjury, that you have to list all the creditors, all your assets, even if it's a credit, even if it's a security that you want to keep, you have to list that.
It's not a good time to try and get away with something.
Not in bankruptcy court, no. We have the best legal minds in the bankruptcy court here in downtown, and they know the bankruptcy code like the back of their hand. And later on, we'll talk about preferential treatment and fraudulent transfers. The trustee's job. The trustee in a bankruptcy is not your friend, but they are there to look over your financial affairs and see if everything is filed correctly, if everything is filed accurately and honestly. So if there are any shenanigans in the filing of your bankruptcy, this will be dismissed.
So what debt can I not get erased if I would file bankruptcy?
We have, in bankruptcy, there is a division between dischargeable and non-dischargeable debts. And mostly all the non-secured debts can be discharged, but there are certain debts that you cannot discharge. That's domestic support, which includes child support, spousal alimony support. You cannot discharge that. Student loans, usually you cannot discharge that. There are exemptions if you can show hardship, or you can show extreme poverty, or if you're below the poverty income line and you have student loans, you can, in rare instances, have that taken away, but I haven't seen that happen yet. You have court-ordered restitution if you have a lien against you or judgment against you, depending on the nature of it. Most likely it cannot be discharged if you have a DUI violation or you have injured somebody in a DUI, cannot get discharged. Government agency fines and penalties cannot get discharged. And surprise, surprise, IRS tax debts cannot be discharged. So if you have if the nature of your debts are IRS tax debts, or you got mortgage or child support, or all these non-dischargeable debts, you might want to think about it, Chapter 13, so you can at least have some breathing room and come, and we can sit down together and propose a payment plan. And the most important one that cannot be discharged, and I talked about it earlier, are debts that are not listed on the schedules. There is a schedule on your bankruptcy that you have to list your debts. If it's not there, it will not be discharged. So, and it's a good idea to have your debt listed in there because the trustee will be looking for any intent on your part to hide any debts or hide, especially assets, hide any assets or transfers of any assets. So it's a good idea for debts to be there. And the last one is debts that are incurred either by fraud or embezzlement. I have, when I was a creditor attorney, I have seen people that have filed for debts that are probably taken by fraud. When you have a fraudulent credit application, we can file an objection to that and have that dismissed.
All right, we will be back with Airene Williamson from the Williamson Law Office discussing more about bankruptcy. If you have any questions for Airene, 257-5396, the number to reach us here in the studio. Right now, we're going to take a break for news, traffic, and weather on News Talk 720 KDWN.
If you would like quality diamonds at exceptional prices, then come to Tom Tutman's Diamond Mine. If you would like sparkling 2-carat Marquise cuts for only $49, then come to Tom Tutman's Diamond Mine. If you would like the personal service you've come to expect from Tom Tutman himself, then do not come to Tom Tutman's Diamond Mine, because Tom Tutman passed away last week at the age of 47, leaving his wife and 3 children, struck down in his prime by the same disease that got his father, so he won't be around to care for his family. And the sad part is, it all could have been detected early with a simple test. But Tom didn't get it.
Have you gotten the medical tests you need? For a list of tests every man should have, go to ahrq.gov. Once again, that's ahrq.gov. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
50,000 watts of news and talk. News Talk 720 KDWN, Las Vegas, the dawn of today's talk radio.
AP Update. I'm Rita Foley. Today, the president is asking Congress for a short-term fix for serious spending cuts that are due to kick in March 1st. Our Jerry Bodlander's on Capitol Hill, where the Republicans want to hear specifics.
The president's move to head off the automatic spending cuts comes on the heels of House Republicans criticizing him for again missing the legal deadline for submitting a budget. They're moving ahead with a bill that requires the president to submit a budget that would balance in 10 years, or else say when the budget he does submit would be balanced. This is Majority Leader Eric Cantor.
It is a bill that frankly says to the president, please join us in doing your job.
In addition to the impact on jobs, the across-the-board cuts would likely hurt economic growth. Jerry Bodlander, Capitol Hill.
For example, Pentagon spending would drop 7%, Medicare 2%, Medicaid and food stamps would not be affected. AP Update, I'm Rita Foley.
9:32 in the Cato on One Nevada Credit Union Traffic Center with a quick update brought to you by Binion's Gambling Hall. No freeway slowdowns, so watch for some debris on the southbound side of 15 as you approach Flamingo. Accidents on the surface streets on the east side, Tropicana east of Maryland Parkway, also Boulder Highway at Harmon, west side Sahara at Fort Apache, and in the northwest on Farm Road west of Decatur. KDWN weather, sunny skies and a high reaching near 70 this afternoon. Currently it's 53 degrees in Las Vegas, and more of the Cato on Legal Hour with attorney Airene Williamson is coming up. From the Cato on One Nevada Credit Union Traffic Center, I'm Mitch Kelly on News Talk 720 KDWN.
Rediscover good food at Binion's. Benny's Bullpen now has a Chicago-style 10-inch cheese pizza made to order for just $3.49. Visit Benny's Bullpen today. Binion's, good food, good whiskey, good gamble.
Hey, Ray Lucia here. According to Ned Davis research, the average bull market runs about 2 years. The current bull market is nearly 4 years old. Now, on top of that, you've got low interest rates, a fight brewing on the debt ceiling, fiscal cliff 2.0, and a very dysfunctional Congress. So what's an investor to do for income and growth yet still manage risk? Well, that is exactly what the Brain Trust will be discussing at the upcoming 2013 Retirement Forum sponsored by RJL Wealth Management at the Red Rock Hotel in Summerlin. This town hall style discussion is something you do not want to miss. And the best part is it's all free. So join me and Rick the Professor Plum as we discuss retirement Saturday, February 9th, 9 a.m. in Summerlin. Call 877-PLANNER, then press the number 2. That's 877-PLA-NER, or register online at discussretirement.com.
Securities offered through Lucia Securities, member SIPC, and affiliate of RJL Wealth Management. Neither Ray Lucia, CFP, nor Rick Plum are registered representatives of any securities firm, including Lucia Securities.
Running a business without being incorporated is like walking a tightrope without a net. One little misstep could cost you your entire business, your personal assets, and even your life savings. But no matter how big or small your business is, you can quickly protect yourself and your family by incorporating or forming an LLC. Call LLC.com today, and we'll get you started by sending you our important free guide, 1-800-500-5701. At LLC.com, we don't offer legal or financial advice. We specialize in making incorporation simple, quick, and easy. In fact, we've been helping businesses do just that for over 100 years. Running a business without a safety net really is putting your whole future on the line, and your family's future. Find out how simple it is to protect your personal assets by incorporating. Request your free guide by calling 1-800-500-5701. This is information you really need to know. That number again is 1-800-500-5701. 1-800-500-5701.
Now back to KDWN's Legal Hour. Have a legal question? Call now. 257-KDWN. That's 257-5396.
KDWN News Time, 9:35. Welcome back to the KDWN Legal Hour. Brand new show on Tuesdays for you with Las Vegas attorney Airene Williamson from the Williamson Law Office. You can reach her at her office at 702-608-4072, 702-608-4072. Or you can reach her by email at info@wlawoffice.com, and website also, wlawoffice.com. 257-5396, the number to call if you have a question for Airene or would like to reach us here in the studios. Airene, back to bankruptcy. That's what we've been focusing on. We talked about the differences between a Chapter 7 and Chapter 13, how you can try and decide what one is the right for you, what you can get taken care of, what debts you can't. Talk a little bit about the credit issue of the whole thing. Is filing a bankruptcy going to affect my credit? Or am I going to be able to, for that period of time, not be able to buy anything unless I have the cash for it?
Well, as far as the credit effect of bankruptcy, the honest answer to that is most likely yes, it will affect your credit. It will stay on your credit for 10 years. But from my experience, people that come to me for bankruptcy, at that point, their credit report is probably affected anyway because they already have collection accounts, either on their credit cards. Their medical bills are already knocking on their door, and by that time, it's already a collection agency. So actually, the purpose of the bankruptcy is to free you up from those debts and give you some breathing room to start paying off those credit card bills and actually start rebuilding your credit report. And as far as having the ability to get credit, in fact, and this is funny because most people that file for Chapter 7, as soon as they file it, they start getting credit card offers from the banks because the banks know that you can't file again for the next 8 years. And you have to make good on that new credit card because it only, if we remember that Chapter 7 can only discharge all the debts prior to the filing. Post-filing, that's a new start. That's a new debt. So yes and no, the answer to that.
Yeah. But if you haven't learned anything along the way, it doesn't matter that you can get credit again because you'll just rack those credit card bills up and then not pay until you can
Exactly. And remember, you can't file for the next 8 years, so you cannot have that, rescue again from the bankruptcy court.
Airene, we've got another caller for you here. Morgan is on the line. Morgan, good morning.
Yes, this is Morgan. There is a misstatement, I believe, on the discharge of federal income taxes.
Right.
They can be discharged under certain conditions.
Right, and especially that's correct, Morgan. If in certain circumstances there is. In fact, if you have a tax lien older than 3 years old, there are certain instances where that can be discharged. But generally, if you do have if you have more recent tax liens, and that depends on the financial situation.
Well, the lien is not, it's actually the assessed date. It has to be 3 years past the assessed date.
Right.
It has to be filed within 2 years and 140 days of an audit or assessment.
That's correct.
That excludes payroll tax penalties or any other penalties.
Exactly.
Okay. I just wanted that clarified. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Morgan.
Thank you, Morgan. 257-5396 if you have a comment or question for Las Vegas attorney Airene Williamson. So I'm going to file. How long does this whole process take, Chapter 7, Chapter 13, until the debt is completely discharged for me?
For Chapter 7, and that's why it's so popular, it's fairly quick when Chapter 7 is from the time of the filing, when you actually file it in court, either in downtown or in e-filing, which is electronically. It's about 4 to 6 months, considering that everything you've done is correct, considering all the schedules, there's no questions on the schedules, you will get a bankruptcy discharge from the bankruptcy court within 6 months. And that's the good thing about Chapter 7 is because there's typically only one hearing to go to. Either you go as a pro se or with your attorney. There's what's called a 341 creditors meeting. It's basically a hearing where the trustee goes over your financials. There's some questions regarding your financials, and it's an opportunity for the creditors to be there and question you regarding your credits or debts. But the good thing about 341 creditor meeting in reality is it only lasts 5 to 10 minutes. Usually there's never a creditor present to question you because they know most likely you're going to be discharged anyway. So there's only one hearing for Chapter 7. It's fairly quick. And the only time I have experience in having a creditor being in a 341 creditor meeting is actually myself when I was a creditor attorney questioning this particular debtor because there's some fraudulent transfers, clearly some fraudulent transfers. And I was there questioning him. And there was, since there was a fraudulent transfers, there's actually an adversarial complaint. And I want to warn the listeners, if there's an adversarial complaint or an objection to your bankruptcy, this is not the time to be pro se or represent yourself, because this is going to be a full-blown litigation in the federal court. So that's 4 to 6 months in Chapter 7. In a Chapter 13, that's 3 to 5 years from the time you file a bankruptcy, you file your repayment plan, you follow your repayment plan to the T and follow the strict guidelines of the IRS on how to live your life, because now you're in Chapter 13. So that's about 3 to 5 years before you get a discharge.
So in a Chapter 13, are your debts actually being erased or just restructured? So you're paying your creditors, but just under new terms that have been established for you.
That's correct. And they have to confirm that repayment plan. And there are some instances, and I have some clients that gets their credit discharge, or I should say credit card discharge, or just pay a portion of their credit card. But really what they want to focus on is saving their house or their car because they need it for living or transportation. So that's where they focus their money and get the others discharged. But typically, yes, it's like a business reorganization, but it's for an individual reorganization.
What about utility services? That's something people might not think about or might be worried about. I'm going to file a bankruptcy. NV Energy is going to find out, and then they're going to cut off my power because they think I don't have the money to pay.
For utilities, if you filed for bankruptcy in the past and you are applying for, if you're leasing a new house or you're leasing an apartment, they cannot discriminate against you because you have a bankruptcy. They cannot say, well, I can't offer you power, or I'm going to cut off your power because you're not filing for bankruptcy. They may ask for a deposit, and you have to continue paying the utility. Of course, you cannot live there for free on water, free on electricity. But no, they cannot discriminate against that, but you do have to continue paying your utility, and they may ask for a deposit. That's usually the case.
What if I went out and bought a car? I couldn't afford the car I wanted on my own, so I got someone to co-sign on the loan for me. Now I really can't afford the car, and I'm filing bankruptcy. What happens to that other person? Does it affect them? Will the creditor go after them first and try and get the money from them because they co-signed on it and not let me get out from under that debt?
The answer to that is yes. And there's actually a schedule in the bankruptcy filing where you have to list all your debts, and the co-signers do that debt. And the good thing about it, if you have a co-signer and that co-signer is your spouse, it would probably be a good idea to file jointly so the creditors cannot go, and this is typically in a Chapter 7, so the creditors cannot go after your spouse for that loan. If you are co-signing, for example, for your daughter or your son or whoever, and you cannot file jointly, or you can't both file for bankruptcy, they will definitely go after the other co-signer because they know they can't go after you.
So they won't just say, okay, we'll take that under the debt we're going to wipe out. They're going to try and get their money.
That's correct. That's correct, because the co-signer is obviously not protected by the bankruptcy code. It's only you that are protected from the bankruptcy code.
And I don't know how they would even find this out, but what if your creditors would get wind that you're thinking about filing bankruptcy? Can they come down hard on you before that and try and get their money because they know that you're going to be protected once you file?
Oh, no. In fact, if you, and I guess there's different ways to answer that. If, for example, you have told your creditors that you are filing for bankruptcy, sometimes they will still go after you, but sometimes if they have noticed that you have filed for bankruptcy, they cannot, and that's where once you file the filing, which is the Bankruptcy Chapter 7 voluntary petition to the court, once that's lodged and file stamped by the Bankruptcy Code, the credit collectors cannot continue collecting on you. They have to stop. There's called an automatic stay. If they violate that automatic stay, they will be penalized for it, and actually you can get monetary damages for having them continue to collect on your debts. Now, I, as a litigator in the past and to this day, I have some defendants who has threatened bankruptcy, but haven't really, it's only a threat and they haven't filed for bankruptcy anyway. So there's a continued collection or continued wage garnishment on their judgment until they file for bankruptcy. But once that filing is stamped, the clock starts on the automatic stay.
And do the phone calls stop from the collection agencies?
Not necessarily, because when you file for bankruptcy, obviously it takes a while for the creditors to get what's called the creditor matrix. The creditor matrix is part of the schedule wherein you list all your creditors and the amount and their address, and you submit that to the court. The court then files a notice or submits a notice to those creditors that you have filed for bankruptcy, and by then they have to stop calling you. Now, if you have filed for bankruptcy and you're still receiving calls, then you can either direct it to your attorney or just tell them that I've filed for bankruptcy. If they still continue to call you, then call me and we'll address that, and they can definitely get sanctioned for it.
All right, we will be back with Las Vegas attorney Airene Williamson from the Williamson Law Office. Final segment coming up, so if you have a question, comment about bankruptcy, 257-5396. Get on the phone now. We'll get to you after the break. Right now, we're going to check in with Mitch Kelly in the KDWN 1 Nevada Credit Union Traffic Center.
And this report at 9:45 brought to you by Terrible's Hotel and Casino. Enjoy the Super 7 special only at Terrible's Hotel and Casino, where for $7.77 you get a juicy filet and a succulent lobster tail served with vegetables and a baked potato. It's the Super 7 special only at Terrible's Hotel and Casino. Come in today. No freeway slowdowns. Looks good out there, but we do have several surface street accidents. The newest one in the downtown area, Charleston to Grand Central Parkway. West Side injury accident, Decatur north of US 95 has Las Vegas fire on scene, and leftover crashes on the east side, Boulder Highway at Harmon and Tropicana east of Maryland Parkway. Your next update's at 10, and from the KDWN 1 Nevada Credit Union Traffic Center, I'm Mitch Kelly on News Talk 720 KDWN.
Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce, taking Nevadans to Capitol Hill for the latest on the federal issues that matter most to you. Sunday mornings at 7:30, here on News Talk 720, KDWN.
How can the real estate market change your life? What if we could show you how to flip 3 houses in 90 days? We at Tactical Real Estate want to teach you how to take advantage of the hottest real estate market in over 50 years. Come spend the day with our team of experts, and we'll show you how to put $10,000 to $30,000 in your pocket over the next 90 days. Call now to secure your seat in this class with 3 convenient dates in the Las Vegas area. This one-day class will teach you how to get in, get out, and get paid. You'll learn how to buy, hold, and sell investment properties with no money down, no credit, and no risk. This seminar is worth thousands of dollars, but free to the first 50 people to call. You risk nothing, but have everything to gain. This intensive one-day real estate class is coming to the Las Vegas area on February 8th, 9th, and 10th. Call 800-442-3450 to secure your seat. This seminar is free to the first 50 people to call. Change your life now and learn how to flip 3 homes in 90 days. Call 800-442-3450. You don't want to miss this. Call now. 800-442-3450.
Having trouble telling time when your alarm goes off in the morning? Need to have someone across the table hold the menu for you when you eat out? Do you need the Reader's Digest big print version of everything? KDWN's John Schaefer here, and that used to be me once. That was until I had a LASIK procedure at LASIK of Nevada. Dr. Rothman and the staff of LASIK of Nevada have performed over 50,000 LASIK procedures on athletes, celebrities, and regular Nevadans like me. Dr. Rothman takes the time to sit down and explain the entire LASIK procedure to you. It really makes you feel comfortable prior to the procedure. Don't like wearing those glasses or contacts? Then call LASIK of Nevada right now to set up your free consultation. 636-2010. That's 636-2010. You know, today's LASIK can be safer and more comfortable than ever before. In fact, the FDA says the advanced technology used by LASIK of Nevada is safe and effective. So what are you waiting for? Put on those glasses you hate and give LASIK of Nevada a call today. 636-2010. 636-2010, and set up your free consultation. There's a big, beautiful world out there. Why not see it more clearly?
What do you get when you take 2 people that used to be married and put them on the air together?
Well, you know what they say the downside to polygamy is that there's more than one mother-in-law.
Mother-in-law? How about more than one wife?
Exes on the Air, Saturday afternoons from 3 to 4, exclusively on AM 720 KDWN.
Now back to KDWN's Legal Hour. Have a legal question? Call now. 257-KDWN. That's 257-5396.
KDWN News Time, 9:49. About 10 minutes left in the program this morning. 257-5396. If you have a question for Las Vegas attorney Airene Williamson from the Williamson Law Office, discussing bankruptcy this morning. Airene, let's talk a little bit about fraudulent transfers and preferences. What exactly does that mean?
Now, I've mentioned earlier that the trustee is appointed to administer your bankruptcy estate, and they're typically not on your side, but what they do is look for your financial affairs and see if there's anything wrong with your bankruptcy filing. And there's two things that people get dinged on, and when their bankruptcy is dismissed, which is not a good thing, discharge a good thing, dismissal not a good thing. Preferential treatment is when you pay creditors ahead of other creditors, and that usually happens to people when they have loaned Aunt Sally $500. They have loaned their mom, they have loaned their son this money, and they were loaned money and now they're paying them before the bankruptcy or before any other creditors. That's a preferential treatment. It's basically you are preferring one creditor over another. So the bankruptcy will be looking at any transfers or payments that you have made over $600 for the past 90 days. If you have made payments to a family or a family member, they can even go as far back as 1 year. And if you have made payments to a trust wherein you are the primary beneficiary, which in itself is fishy for bankruptcy court, they can take a look at that for as far back as 10 years. So these are the areas that you might want to think about before you file for bankruptcy. Now, fraudulent transfer is also the same concept, and it's basically when you are trying to hide or conceal assets from the bankruptcy court or from the reach of the creditors. So if you have, and I've seen cases when I was a creditor attorney, I've seen cases where people would transfer several of their investment properties to their dads or their mothers, and I've gone after them for that reason alone. It's because they're trying to hide those assets. So if you have any transfers like that, and one of the most common, not just preferential treatment or fraudulent transfer, is that credit card purchases. And when you're a debtor and say, okay, I'm filing for bankruptcy next month, let's rack up this card.
Sure.
And spend money on it or take a cash advance. Now, the trustee will take a look back 90 days for any credit card transfers, any cash payments that you have made, and they can get that back from a third-party person that you have paid it to. And if you have loaned money or transfer money to your mom, they can take that back. And if they don't, then there's what's called an adversary complaint brought by the trustee or brought by one of the creditors, and by then your bankruptcy will be more complicated than you ever even imagined.
And I'm sure people do try and do that. Like, if I just, got a little cash here, let me just spread it out a little bit so that they don't know that I have it.
Exactly. And that's usually the case, and that's usually where I come in when I was a creditor attorney. That's usually where I come in and file an adversary complaint. An adversary complaint is not what you want on your filing for bankruptcy, because that will not only delay your filing, but that adversarial complaint usually involves fraud, cause of action, and that is very grave. And usually what I see people do is either transfer their investment properties, transfer their cars, or sell it for $0. And that's usually an indication of a fraudulent transfer. When you transfer the property for less than its market value, and sometimes they would even quitclaim deed the property for zero value. And that's in itself an indication of a fraudulent transfer.
I'd imagine as an attorney, you would tell your clients that when you get to the filing of the bankruptcy, it's the time to tell the truth. You're already at that point. Tell the truth about everything.
Exactly. And if you have debts anyway, you might want to list all of it since it's going to be discharged. And it's a good thing. So if you want to have those debts discharged, say it, tell it, and place it on your schedules, and it will be discharged if it's a dischargeable debt.
Well, I'm married, and I need to file bankruptcy for some debts that I have. Can I do it without my wife's permission, per se?
Technically, you can. I've seen some people come to me and say, well, my wife wants to file a bankruptcy, but I don't want her bankruptcy to affect my credit. That's fine as long as you don't have a lot. Well, if you do have a lot of joint debts together, that's probably not a good idea, because if there's a joint debt, it's going to be on your credit report anyway. And if it's joint debt, like I talked about earlier, if they cannot go after your wife, they will go after you. So if you are thinking about a Chapter 7 and only one of you files, talk to me first, talk to an attorney, and see if it's something you can do alone.
Does it have to be debt that's accumulated together? Say I get engaged to someone that has racked up a lot of debt. Does that debt then become my responsibility as well once we're married?
Well, then that's a different area of law, and that's in family law. But if it's a debt that's incurred prior to your marriage, typically it's a separate property. And if your spouse files a loan, then that separate property can be listed on her debt, and you may not be responsible for it. But there are ways to create a separate property and become it a community property. And so be careful with that when you are trying to identify property as separate or community property, because you never know if you start commingling your funds, or if it's a house that was obtained separately and now you've, as a spouse, then you start paying on it and paying improvements on it, and it becomes commingled. So be careful when you're identifying those debts.
So check those things out.
Check those things out. Talk to me first before you put it as a separate property. There are consequences on it. And another thing that I want to talk about before we end the show is that if you are filing for Chapter 7 or Chapter 13 and you have a small business, that becomes a different scenario. And that's because some people will say, oh, well, I want to file for personal bankruptcy, but I want my small business to continue. Well, can they go after it? And the answer is maybe. And that is a very grave consequence. And if you want to do small business bankruptcy, or you want to just do personal but not affect your small business, or just do small business bankruptcy but not affect your personal, talk to an attorney. Do not do it alone because there are grave consequences to it.
I think you should talk to an attorney anyway. All of it sounds, there's just so much to it. Even if you think it's simple, you would benefit, I would think, because the attorney will help you make sure that you're doing everything you need to do.
That's right. That's right. And there are just so many implications in bankruptcy, especially with a preferential treatment and fraudulent transfers that can get you dinged. And you don't want it. The problem is you file for bankruptcy, it gets dismissed, which is not a good thing. Then either you have to start over again, or there are consequences to starting over again, and you may not get the benefit of an automatic stay if you do it incorrectly in the first place.
Does bankruptcy still have the stigma that it once had long ago, or since everything has turned in the economy, more and more people need to turn to it? It's something that, it's a tool that's there for people to use, so you shouldn't feel bad about doing it in the first place. But back in the day when fewer people were doing it, I think people would look at you like, oh, you didn't know what you were doing with your own finances because you had to file bankruptcy.
That's right. And, with the economy today, there's a lot of people, not only in the bankruptcy arena, but also in foreclosures and short sales. I mean, people are doing that more often now. And to be honest with you, people's credit report is not in the best shape as it was before anyway. So if you are having a hard time catching up to those credit card debts, think about the alternatives. Think about bankruptcy. And there's other alternatives other than bankruptcy, but it doesn't have the stigma as it had before, yes.
Right, because if you lost your job and had to live on credit cards just to survive and feed your kids, I mean, you did what you had to do.
That's correct. And you might want to talk to an attorney. There's other alternatives to bankruptcy, but definitely bankruptcy is a tool that you might want to think about.
And you're teaching a class as well?
That's correct. Every month I do a bankruptcy class at my law office, Williamson Law Office. This February 27, that's a Wednesday, from 3:30 to 4:30 p.m. I do a basics of bankruptcy class. It's free, but it's only limited to 10 people. It's 10 seating. So if you want to come in and have a one-on-one consultation with me or check out the class, come on in. It's free.
All right. And if you would like more information on that, they can give you a call at your office?
Call at my office or check out my website at wlawoffice.com. There is a area there that says free class. You can RSVP by website, or you can call me, and I'll put you on the list.
All right. Airene Williamson, Las Vegas attorney from the Williamson Law Office. We will talk to you again next Tuesday morning at 9.
All right. Thanks, John.
What are we going to talk about next week?
That would be landlord-tenant. That's a big topic. That might be a 2-part series, but we'll see.
All right, that is a big topic. Airene Williamson, you can reach her at her office, 608-4072, or on the web at wlawoffice.com. Coming up next, Ray Lucia on News Talk 720 KDWN.
Hey, Ray Lucia here. You know, according to Ned Davis research, the average bull market runs about 2 years. The current bull market is nearly 4 years old. Now, on top of that, you've got low interest rates, a fight brewing on the debt ceiling, fiscal cliff 2.0, and a very dysfunctional Congress. So what's an investor to do for income and growth yet still manage risk? Well, that is exactly what the Brain Trust will be discussing at the upcoming 2013 Retirement Forum sponsored by RJL Wealth Management at the Red Rock Hotel in Summerlin. This town hall style discussion is something you do not want to miss. And the best part is it's all free. So join me and Rick the Professor Plum as we discuss retirement Saturday, February 9th, 9 a.m. in Summerlin. Call 877-PLANNER, then press the number 2. That's 877-PLA-NER, or register online at discussretirement.com.
Securities offered through Lucia Securities, member SIPC, and affiliate of RJL Wealth Management. Neither Ray Lucia, CFP, nor Rick Plum.